Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin,
Hi, I am Nate,
and this is Film Dispute.
and today we're going to be talking about the movie Good Time.
Good Time. Released in 2017, the crime drama thriller, directed by Benny, is it Safdie?
Yeah, Safdie.
Okay, and Josh Safdie. Written by Ronald Bronstein and Josh Safdie, starring Robert Pattinson as Connie, Benny Safdie as Nick, Jennifer Jason Leigh as Corey, and Buddy Duress as Ray.
Yep, it grossed around, the budget was around 400 million. I mean, 400 million.
4.5.
4 million.
Yeah.
Around 4 million and grossed around 2 million. That's what I found.
Yep.
The story goes that Good Time is about Connie and his disabled brother Nick getting into a failed bank robbery, leading Nick into going to prison. So the film takes you on a journey of Connie trying to get his brother back.
Yeah.
Taking place.
Before we get too far, I have to tell you, believe it or not, a few of my friends watch this, and they've said, you guys don't really dispute a whole lot. And to be fair, we don't. But Suspiria, I think, was our first one that kind of did.
Yeah.
And to be honest, guys, it's really just a name. You gotta name something at the end of the day. And
Really?
Something that can be spelled and something that hasn't already been taken. So, that's just touching on that. We do dispute a lot, but at the end of the day, you just have to name it something. So, we also want to recommend movies that some people can watch. And I'm not gonna lie and say I don't like a movie to make the title of the podcast true. So, so we're gonna keep it 100 with you guys.
Yeah, exactly. So, Kevin, what did you think of this movie?
I'd like to thank you for recommending this movie.
Really?
I loved this movie.
Dude, I love it too. It was one of my, when it first came out, 2017, I'll say, it was a really great year for movies. There was a lot of great movies that came out. There was Good Time, obviously. It was one of my favorite movies. I love Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Shape of Water, so many other movies that have come out. And I feel like Good Time was just like another addition to like showing how like, I don't know, crazy of a year it was, and it's a shame too because it's not a movie that has really gotten so much press as other movies have. Like one, it wasn't nominated for any Oscars. It wasn't,
and it was a flop. To be honest,
it was, but like critically, like people have really enjoyed this movie. It's I don't know if you heard about Cannes Film Festival. It's it's like one of the most world-renowned like film festivals, but it got a 6-minute standing ovation after the movie ended, and which is pretty rare for some movies. But
I think only Tarantino movies have topped that, so it's pretty substantial. So let's jump right into it. So we start off with the therapist discussion. And you learn so much about Nick in this little scene. These close, tight-up shots are so emotional.
Exactly.
And it's like of Mice of Men. It's like, with the speech pattern of a child and this big buff guy, and it's just, it's sad.
Pretty much, yeah. This pretty much takes you on like a certain like intense 20-minute sequence of really you getting to know Connie's brother Nick, who is played by one of the directors of the film, and very, very like
it's really good,
very genuine too. Like
it's right up there with like Forrest Gump.
Exactly. When I first watched this, I thought they actually got a disabled man to play this character, but then you realize that it's actually one of the directors. So he does an amazing job here, and
in this discussion, you almost get close to cracking the code on Nick and his inner mind working, because he's laying out all these things to this therapist, and you're getting closer and closer and closer to the answer, and then Connie, his brother, bashes through the door, rips him out of there, tells him, "What are you doing? You don't need that help," and they're off.
Exactly, yeah. So Connie wants to go on a bank robbery because they need money.
At this point, Pattinson or Connie is an asshole. At this point, at least that was my opinion. I was like, all right, this is obviously the bad seed brother.
Exactly, yeah. So they go into the bank, get a bank rob the bank, get out of there. obviously it doesn't work out because Connie himself, he's very charismatic. He is, but he's really dumb.
Yeah.
He's very dumb, and he makes a lot of dumb decisions in this movie.
This movie's, I think it's only about 104 or an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's got to move quick, but it really aids the movie because you're jumping from a very interesting therapist scene to a bank robbery, and it jumps you all around, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's very intense. Really, it's just like a bunch of sequences of Connie.
Basically, a day in the life, kind of.
Yeah, of Connie making these decisions in result. Seeing the results of Connie's decisions with all the characters that he encounters throughout the film. So, yeah, of course, the bank robbery fails to, succeed. So,
Yep.
So
now they're at the escape.
Yeah, they get chased by the police. Nick doesn't. Nick crashes into a glass door,
but they do have the money, and so they get into the they get into the car first, and then the pink dye pack explodes in the car.
Yeah,
and that's interesting. And then he's covered. He's like Nick is like basically a 5-year-old. He's covered in all this red paint, and so Connie has to help him out, which is he's kind of that dad figure in this moment.
And that's the thing here is just Connie. He's like a character you're really not supposed to like because he's so he's very full of himself and he's very
mischievous.
Yeah, he's not a good guy.
Yeah,
he really isn't. But the thing is, what makes you actually try to care for him is because he really cares for his brother.
Cares for Nick. Yeah.
Yeah, he really cares for Nick, and Nick is disabled too, so that's also another added.
And when they go to wash off the paint during the escape, Nick goes straight for the toilet and Connie's in the sink. It just shows their mindsets.
Exactly. So yeah, eventually Nick goes unconscious and gets taken to prison, and this continues on. I mean, this is the last time you'll see Nick throughout the entire movie until like the very end. But even then, like it really sets Nick as a character really sets his foot on the importance of his character for this movie, because pretty much for the rest of the movie you pretty much follow Connie. And Connie,
he's the MacGuffin. Nick is the MacGuffin because that's all Connie's trying to get. That's all the main character wants in this movie is to get his brother back. So then we're into the cop questioning Nick, and Nick's not giving up anything. He trusts Connie more than anything, and then he goes to jail. Gets beat up in jail, pepper sprayed, gets in a couple fights over whose TV channel is on, and then we go to the bail bondsman.
Yeah, so Connie. I think another thing about this movie is that it really shows how trashy Queens is. It really shows the authenticity of how like, I don't know, just like the way people handle things in Queens, and like, they're able. Connie has this girlfriend who looks like played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who looks like she's like 20 years older than him, and so many of the characters here are so interesting because of how weird they are.
Flawed. Yeah,
exactly.
Each of them has a quirk.
Jennifer Jason Leigh's character is just like this mama's girl,
screaming, crying mama's girl.
Yeah, and she's like in her what looks like to be like her mid 40s, and so
obviously being used by Connie. It's and she's just grasping onto any relationship she thought she had with him.
Exactly. So Connie is, of course, using her to use her mom's credit card to be able to bail Nick out.
And there's a big argument when Connie picks her up and takes her away from her mother, and they go to the bail bondsman. He convinces her to put it on her credit card, her mother's credit card, and it's been declined.
Yeah, it doesn't work because, of course, they wouldn't think that her mom wouldn't cancel anything.
Yeah, Corey hops on the phone with her mother and, chews her out about canceling the card, and she's crying, and I just wanted to help someone, and she's obviously got mental issues.
Yeah, him and Connie, so they do really fit together.
I feel like he feeds off the weak, Really? And so he finds all these people, the little girl who he makes out with to get her car, and then all these things. and even Corey, I find her to be a little on the slower side, and she's obviously a lot older, and so I think he feeds off that a lot, and he thinks, he's just trying to get this 10, 15 grand out of her before he can toss her to the side.
Yeah, and him himself, he thinks he is like better than like a lot of people because he does have like a weird, interesting mind. He thinks in a past life he was a dog.
Yeah.
And he thinks like so many weird, irrational things. But at the same time,
Do you think that was true, what he said about the dog?
I think so.
Because I felt that was another way, because when they're watching TV before that, he says to her, or she says to him, the little girl says, I think she's 16, she says.
Yeah, she's 16.
She says, I love dogs more than anything, or something like that. They're watching TV, and these dogs are in cages, and she says, I love dogs more than anything. And then he says, I think in a past life I was a dog. And then he makes out with her, steals her car. And so I thought it was another play, because when he leaves the car, when they're at Adventureland or whatever, Fairyland, they're at the theme park.
Yeah.
And he says to her to keep her in the car and to keep her quiet. He says, I think you're my soulmate. I think we belong together. I'll be right back. And he has no intention of doing that.
I get what you're coming from, but I still feel like I did feel like he really did mean that he was a dog in a past life. I think it was just one of the things he just wanted to tell this girl, just because he wants to show how important he is or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
But like,
yeah, and if anything else, it just adds another dynamic to the movie.
exactly right. So what were we? Yeah. So what they find out is that Nick is actually is being hospitalized right now.
Yeah, because he got beat up by the group in the jail.
Yeah, so Nick, instead of trying to bail him out, he just decides to go to the hospital to try to steal his brother back instead of having to pay any sort of money. And so he goes in there, and
he's really smart in this scene.
He really is.
So they're at Elmhurst Hospital, and he finds, well, he knows he needs to find Nick, and so he sees a cop, and he sees, I think it's one of the employees actually, and he gets him to reveal which floor all the prisoners are kept, which is a big deal. And so he kind of steals that information, and then he goes to that floor, finds the security guard, who he tells about the vending machine.
Yeah, he
gets that bug in his ear, and then he goes into the next room, and later on he hears the security guard say, I'm going to go to the vending machine.
Exactly, yeah. He passively sort of just talks to these people just because, making himself seem like just this weird guy who just like kind of just talks to.
Yeah, I think his excuse was his dad's dying in the other room, and he's been in the hospital for like 48 hours straight.
Exactly, yeah. So he comes up with these weird excuses and everything just to get like certain like pieces of information. So yeah, he is smart in here. And so yeah, the cop eventually walks away just to get a coffee, and so he's able to get his brother out.
He's got to act quickly, so he bashes the handcuffs off of the bed, grabs the wheelchair, stuffs his brother in it, and they get out of there.
Yeah, so thankfully they're able to get out of there, and like, I don't know, this was another scene after this that I find so like authentic. It's just like him going into the bus and asking just like somebody, hey, am I able to just get my brother here?
He's got no coat. He's really cold. Let me go first. Yeah.
I don't know. And the lady just lets him, and it's just like, I don't know.
He's got to feel like a boss. Connie has to feel like a boss during this whole scene. And then Connie needs to use their phone because, well, he gets dropped off the Accessoride bus, and he wheels himself over to the person who he was next to in line on the bus.
Yes, this random lady. I believe she's Caribbean.
Yeah. Something like that. Possibly Jamaican, whatever.
I'm not sure.
Something like that, sorry. And then her daughter is the one we've been talking about, who has the car.
So Connie is trying to, he's not able to get into his mom's house, which has been something that he's been trying to do. He's trying to get, communicate with his mom, but she's not answering him. So even after like doing all these, even after like asking like a favor from this
Yeah.
Caribbean lady. He decides to go to her house to see if he can use his her phone.
Because I think they're locked out of their car or
Yeah,
something.
they're locked out of their house, and he couldn't find the key. And it's so interesting here, like I feel like he would have thought that this would be so hard for him to like be able to use like a phone or even stay at this lady's house.
She's
But like
very
this,
inviting. She
but-
gives him a room. She sets him up.
yeah, really, like
She
pretty
even
much with anything. And
I don't even know where she goes because he ends up dyeing his hair and everything. Maybe she just goes to sleep, but yeah, he goes crazy.
she says that to her daughter that she's gonna take a medicine
Okay.
to help her go to sleep, which who knows what that means.
Yeah.
who knows what that is. So because like you
Fresh
go
out of
into
the
her-
hospital, I guess. I
you
get
go
it.
you go into her house and it is completely like trashed and like
Yeah.
so much garbage.
Super dark. There's like one light in the whole place.
exactly the only thing that's lighting up the whole house are the TVs.
Yeah.
And like there's expired food that seems like it's been there for like months.
Yeah.
And like
And you can tell that this little girl just wants an adventure.
exactly
She just wants
yeah
to get out of there.
it's so trashed and like disgusting. And even this little girl as a character, I feel like she defines somebody, a 16-year-old, like currently right now, because
Yeah.
there's so many teens right now that are like smoking weed
Yeah.
and like thinking the way that this girl does, and it's just like I don't know, it's just adds
She's
to
like Luke Skywalker looking at the dual sunset. She just wants to know what's out there.
exactly, yeah. So yeah, Connie decides, I don't know, just randomly, he decides to dye his hair. It's
And
just-
I thought it was a good. Many things get called back to in this movie, like
Mhm.
dogs and the TV, because that's what gets him in trouble. That's what gets Nick in trouble in the jail cell, and it's also what kind of gets Connie in trouble because he's on TV as a wanted man. So all these things get called back to, and even the bandages, like the Ray's face gets bandaged up, and when Connie's searching through the medicine cabinet to find the hair dye, he sorts through a bunch of band-aids there too. So all these little details are interesting.
yeah, no, I didn't honestly. I feel like you've been really looking into this more than I have, honestly. But yeah, it's weird how great detail these two directors go through to make feel how, I don't know, genuine and authentic the setting is here. So yeah,
So his hair is dyed. He's sitting on the couch with this girl, and they're just talking. And this is, I think, where the dogs get brought up, where she loves dogs, and he thinks he was a dog in the previous life. And then on the TV, they switch to the news, and he's on it. And
he's
it's
on it.
definitely him. No way getting around it. So he just makes out with her.
Makes out with her, and like just to make this clear, he looks like he's like in his late 20s, and this girl is like 16 years old, so it's
like
very
28 versus 16. It's too much of a gap.
It's full on pedophilia right here, straight up.
Takes her to the bed.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable, to say the least, watching this. But like, that just shows how weird this Connie is. It's like,
And then
he's willing to go through like the furthest length.
Yeah. And this movie had me all the way up until here, obviously. But right between them getting busy, Nick, quotation marks, wakes up, and it's not Nick.
It's not Nick. It's just it's a random guy who, is obviously like yelling and screaming, just like, where am I?
Yeah.
And so.
And to be honest, I had actually forgotten about Nick's speech impediment at this point because it had been so long since we heard him talk. And so I just knew Nick's his brother. And so when the guy wakes up from the hospital screaming and speaking clearly, I was completely confused for about 30 seconds. I was like, yeah, stay quiet, Nick. But then I figured out this is not Nick.
Yeah, I mean, he also has sort of like a similar voice to Nick as well.
Yeah, it's a deeper voice.
Yeah, so like.
And it's Ray.
It's the character Ray, who's also another great character. All the characters here are so interesting. Even the characters that are literally in the movie for like 5 minutes like the bail bondsman, and then the girlfriend, the girl, even the
Memorable and served their purpose, I think.
exactly, yeah, because really in the end, all these characters revolve around Connie. Because Connie is the one who makes the decisions resulting into for the worse really. So yeah, basically yeah, this random guy who Connie now has to deal with because he stole like a random person.
And even worse, he has to go back to the hospital and do it all over again.
Exactly, he has to get
And now he's got to bring Ray with him.
yeah, Ray with him because I mean it's not like you can't really do anything about it. You can't take him back or anything.
Yeah. So they drive up to the hospital. They stop at a White Castle that's nearby to grab some food.
Yeah,
and that's when Ray tells his whole story
on how exactly he got there, and it's so funny. He gets high on acid and basically just and gets also super drunk and
gets into a cab. He doesn't have any money. The cab driver's dealt with this before, and he threatens to take him to the jail to the courthouse. And that's when he jumps.
Yeah, he just jumps out of the car.
About, I think 70, 80 miles an hour.
Exactly, yeah.
That's how he messed up his whole face.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's just so, I don't know, it's just like a really funny experience. Of course, they stop by at a White Castle. I feel like White Castle is like the trashiest like fast food place like ever.
I don't know
if
there's a greasier place on the planet. To be
honestly, I don't know, but yeah.
So now we're back to fantasy. Well, we're at Fantasyland now because he tells him about when he was with these guys. One of them was a drug dealer. This is Ray we're talking about. He was with these guys. One of them was a drug dealer, and in this backpack, when they were running through Fantasyland, they had a Sprite bottle of
acid.
Acid,
yeah,
I guess.
A Sprite bottle of acid,
which is worth about 10 to 15 grand.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's how Connie thinks he's going to get this bail money, because once he gets this, he can sell it, free money, and he's out of there.
Yeah, so
they head to Fantasyland.
Yeah, so they head to Fantasyland with the 16-year-old girl.
Yep. They use the car mats to get over the wired fence, the barbed wire fence.
And so they try to look for it. Of course, they get searched by what's his name? He's played by Barkhad Abdi. Who I love this actor. He's not in very many movies, but he was first introduced in Captain Phillips, and he's been like in a few other movies
I recognized him.
Yeah, he's such a awesome actor, and I wish he was in more movies. But he's sort of like kind of like a character actor.
He's got that funny high pitched.
Yeah, and so. It's great to see him in this movie because I wish he was in more movies. But yeah, so he gets caught by this guy.
And right as they find the acid, so they've got the acid, but they're also caught. The guard finds Ray, and the guard's only one person, so he can only find one at a time. He finds Ray, and I think Connie just runs at that point.
Well, Connie, they decide to hide, and freaking, I believe it's Ray who like beats the crap out of Barkhad Abdi's character.
Yeah.
and they also
take the guard's clothes.
Also give him a bunch of acid just so
so he won't remember this when he wakes up. That's what Ray says.
Exactly. Yeah. They give him like a ton too, like
a lethal dose, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So he's completely
he can't even talk when he wakes up.
Exactly.
He's
yeah.
like mentally gone.
Right. So Connie is able to convince once the cops come because the guard has called the cops at this point.
Yeah. And they find the little girl at the same time. And the little girl, they know that she's involved somehow, but they don't know how. And Connie's posing as the security guard at that point, helping the police solve this crime of these two people, of which he is one of them. And so he gets questioned about the little girl, and by the police, and if he'd ever seen her before, and he says no, and that kind of crushes her.
It really does. It's another decision that Connie makes that sort of turns out for the worse for another character.
And he's just a wrecking ball through everyone he meets. I mean, in this whole movie, he's a wrecking ball, except for Nick. But even Nick, I mean, he's taking him down this road that he shouldn't be.
Exactly.
Being a bank robber.
He ends up in prison.
So he really is a wrecking ball through every relationship in this entire movie.
Right. And so we get into I believe they go into a hotel. Like they go into a hotel room. I can't remember which ones it is, but like this is where they wait for the drug dealer to get the acid money.
Yeah. So he comes in and the drug dealer's talking to Ray, who's his friend, and Connie's in the room with a dog, and so Ray's friend doesn't want anything to do with that dog, so they're talking through the door at this point, and he really gives Connie the impression that he's gonna come back, go to an ATM with some money, and come back. He tells Ray that he's gonna bring a gun. So Connie got the hint. He wants out of there immediately. He knows that this isn't gonna go well for him. Ray wants to keep him there because he's got that money in that bottle, basically.
Really?
And so it's Ray's responsibility to keep him there. Connie's trying to go, and Connie runs. Ray looks over the balcony, and it's a great shot of Connie running down and out, and then caught by police.
It's one of the few sorry to interrupt. It's one of the few like wide shots in this movie because so much of this film is made up of close-ups, like extreme close-ups, and it's sort of like a style that the Safdie brothers have at this point. In another movie, it was kind of the same thing, but I think in this one they really define it, and it's just like, I don't know, it's such a cool style because it really you see like the emotions of these characters in great detail just because they're in like extreme close-ups. And so, but when there are like huge wide shots, like there's wide shots of of this shot right here with Connie running by the cops, and then there's also a shot of them driving through Queens, and it's very beautiful stuff.
Oh yeah, there's great shots all around, and for a movie this short, you don't expect to get too many of those, and we did. So, but once Connie's tackled by the police, you see the Sprite bottle fly out of his backpack as he hits the floor, and Ray is the only one who knows what that Sprite bottle actually contains, so he runs down there immediately. Correct? Or no?
He
scales
comes
down the building?
Yeah, he gets out of the window.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know what he's I think he's just
drunk.
I think he's trying to just like...
We should mention that he's an alcoholic too.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to find a way to really escape through this situation, really.
Yeah.
So his only thought is to just hang out of the building and try to like climb his way down.
That was one of the confusing things to me, but he was drunk.
Yeah,
so.
I'm not sure what his thought process was, but obviously it doesn't work out because he eventually loses his grasp and just falls down, and Ray just gets killed.
He's dead. Yeah. So that's one of the last, and that's again, this Connie wrecking ball. None of this would have happened if it wasn't for Connie. Not to say that these people were good people to begin with, but his actions do have consequences, and this is the biggest one.
So, in the end, nothing works out. Connie gets taken by the police, and I feel like there's this last shot of Connie just, like, looking furious, and just I feel like in this, he realizes what he did wrong. He realizes all the decisions that he's made, what has been the worst thing he could have done ever.
I think he just recognizes that his good time is over, and that's the title of this movie.
Really?
I think he just...
Exactly, yeah. And it's just, I don't know, in that way it's sad, and you do sympathize for him for that, because he was really trying to get his brother in this, but he did it in the worst way possible.
Yeah, you start to feel more and more for Connie's situation as you go through this movie, and he does certain things, but at the end of the day, he's just trying to get his brother. So
yeah,
and at the end of the movie, you see his brother Nick with his grandma. I think they're in the hospital.
Yeah, they go back to like the therapist,
and the therapist puts him in this class. And he, just like any fifth grader or whatever, thrown into a new class, he's trepidatious. But, they start to ask some questions about if you've experienced this, cross the line. And they say family drama, and he crosses the line. And then they say getting into trouble for something you didn't do, and he crosses the line. And, you kind of get to see where his headspace is at, and he realizes that none of this was his fault. And he's just got to go from there.
It's the absolute perfect way to end this movie. It's just like he knows no better.
Yeah.
He doesn't know any better, and and it really shows that with this final scene. So yeah, that finishes off a good time. It was a good time.
It was a good time.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure every other reviewer has said that about this movie because it really is. It really is a great movie.
And it is perfect length. You never want any more from this movie, and you never want any less. So I thought it was perfect.
What did you think of the score in this movie?
The score was good.
I love the score, like all the synthesizers and like the weird industrial sounds of the movie. It just adds to like the intensity.
Total Recall-esque.
Exactly, it adds to the intensity.
It had
of
a techno feel to it all. Yeah.
Yeah, like when people are screaming, like when the girlfriend is screaming, like it just adds, and then all of a sudden the bass on the on the music gets like higher and higher, just adds to like the the intensity.
Yeah.
I really like the score. I love every character in this movie. Every actor like does their performance justice. It's just Robert Pattinson. What the?
Yeah, this is
Robert Pattinson does a whole 180 like with this character. He's this Brit and he does like the perfect like Brooklyn accent.
Oh yeah.
It's so
this might be the first thing we've ever seen him in, and I enjoyed it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, but you know him from like Twilight, right?
Yeah, I know the horrors that is those. But yeah, I thought, this definitely showed his chops as an actor, at least to me.
Well, so at least you start off with like him in a great role, because pretty much in every other movie he's in, like he's like either god awful or like fine, But I think he decided that he wanted to actually use his acting chops and like try something interesting. And so with this movie, it was like the perfect movie. So I now consider Robert Pattinson to be an amazing, wonderful actor. He's so good. I don't even think of him as Robert Pattinson in this movie. I think of him as Connie.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing you can do as an actor, is
Definitely.
to turn into a character.
All right. Do you want to get into scores?
Yeah. So I want to give this a 10, but I think I'm still going to give this a 9. One, I think my only issue is that I wish I could have seen Nick a little bit more, because he's only in 20 minutes of the movie and then like 5 minutes at the end. And I wish I would have seen like how he was doing, at least after Connie didn't get Nick and he got Ray instead. I wanted to see where he was at, but I guess in the end it really wouldn't all work in context of the film and as for like pacing goes. So
I think with a story like this about a person like Nick, I think it does a lot more emotional work for the film if we cut it where we did, because I think it allows the viewer to kind of have the highest aspirations for where Nick is headed.
True that. But still, then I'm gonna give this a 9.
I'm right there with you. I think I'm gonna give it an 8.5.
8.5. All right.
But I loved it.
I'm glad you liked it.
This was a great movie. Thank you for showing it for me.
I'm glad.
And what's our next movie gonna be? I think we're gonna talk about Tarantino's new movie, just like we did with Toy Story and Spider-Man. We'll probably give about 20 minutes to that. You think?
Okay. Yeah.
But the next movie I want to do, because it reminded me of this movie so much, is Scorsese, an early Scorsese movie, After Hours.
After Hours. Okay. I actually haven't seen this one, so okay. I'm actually interested in watching this one.
I've only seen it once or twice.
Okay.
But it reminded me, it's a movie that just throws you around, just like this movie did, and I think we're going to enjoy it.
All right, great. Another Scorsese film. I'm excited. All right.
Yeah, back to back for me. I didn't even realize, but we'll stay away for a little while. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Film Dispute. My name is Kevin.
And I am Nate.
You guys have a good night. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Appreciate it.